Good afternoon, Lebanon area seniors. We have again for you a lovely crafternoon. Looking for something to do to keep you occupied while you're at home. Maybe you're just trying to stay in from a warm summer afternoon that's getting a little too much to be outside. Or maybe you're still self-quarantining and minimizing your social interactions to stay safe during this pandemic. No matter your reason, or if you're just looking for something new to learn, we've got a project for you today. It's only as expensive as you want to make it, and there's lots of opportunities. I will be sharing quite a few links in the information, the video description down below or in the comments so that you can follow up and see even more opportunities to use today's skill in a couple of different craft ways. There's all kinds of ways you could use this technique today that we're going to learn about and use applications. Well, it's really limited only to your imagination. So today we are talking about, you might have guessed it because of the pile in front of me, but we're talking about flowers. Pick this little beauty outside the senior center here. I've got a couple of them that are just really cute and whimsical, hanging outside. Comes in, of course, all varieties, colors, and shapes that you can imagine. These are cute, sweet little flowers that we got here at the center, growing in our wildflower bed. One we use to attract beneficial insects to our raised bed gardens. Anyway, these are what we're going to use today to talk about pressing flowers. Pressing flowers is a skill and a craft that has been around for, well, a really long time. It's a great way to preserve a flower for identification purposes. I know that over in Corvallis at the Oregon State University, they have something called the herbarium, which is pretty much a library of plant life. They have a bunch of dried specimens carefully preserved, and they are always adding new specimens to those books and to that catalog of information they have in those organic materials. They even make special little seed packets so that they can honor and collect the seeds or any broken pieces of the plants that come apart while they are trying to preserve those plants. So it's a really neat collection, and for scientific purposes and also just for keeping track of different species over time. It's a great resource. It's got scientific purposes, but it's also got just a lot of arts and crafts purposes. Preserving flowers is definitely a fun technique to add some color to a variety of crafts before we had a lot of artificial means to do so. It's also a way to cherish a memory. You might have kept a flower or something from a special bouquet or for other reasons in your life and tried to preserve them. Pressing them just keeps them in a state where you can keep it longer. It does crush the flower, so it's not going to necessarily maintain a three-dimensional shape when you dry it, because obviously the term pressing, it's going to have to give a little. So we're really dehydrating a flower is what we're doing. To preserve the flower, you've got to take the moisture out of it. As long as there's moisture in the flower, it is going to decay. It might mold. It's going to continue to alter and change over time, and just kind of be messy to deal with. So we do want to remove the moisture, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. In that removal period, in that time lapse usually, it involves pressing out some of that moisture. That's the term pressed flower. Not only squishes the flower out, but it also squeezes out any moisture. Now you might be wondering what this contraption is next to me. This is traditional flower press. So a traditional flower press, if you want to make one or design one of your own, is a couple of pieces of wood with holes drilled in and some nuts and bolts that are used to keep applying pressure to the flowers evenly. Notice we have four, one in each corner, and in the middle there's layers of cardboard. So those layers of cardboard, when we take this apart, you can put flowers between each layer and do a lot of flowers. Obviously, there's a lot of sheets of cardboard here at one time in one pressing. So this is, if you really want to get into it, this is a tool that you can make or acquire. This one was gifted to us here at the center, It even has on the front of it, I think it's cute, there are some pressed flowers that were used to decorate the top of this little self-identifier. But this one's really cute, really fun. I'm going to set it down here on the floor for right now just to reclaim some work surface. Another traditional technique, and this is the one I'm very familiar with. It's the book. It's the book method. You find a big book that you've got around the house. This one happens to be Bartlett's familiar quotes. I use this in a lot of different crafting reasons, including taking pages out for purposes. But you're going to want a nice big thick book, and then you're going to want to be able to add more books or more weights on top of it, again, evenly to add that pressure to those flowers to press them. It usually takes a couple of weeks to do that, to really get the moisture squished down for those flowers to dry out. I did go ahead and preload some flowers in here. They haven't been sitting very long, so I don't think they're going to be dried. I did, however, use another technique to pre-dry some flowers, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. And there is another method I was learning, actually two more methods I was learning about recently. You can also, what's sitting over here, you might not be too familiar with this after you retire or because it's summer, a handy dandy iron and ironing board. You can actually iron some flowers. Yep, you heard me right. Break out the iron. I might not use it for clothes as much as I do for crafts now, but I do still own an iron. And you can press your flowers flat and also dry. You do want to make sure that you don't have any water in your iron and you don't have any steam settings on, and you keep the temperature low to medium because you don't want to burn the flowers. You want to try to avoid that if you can. You just want to try to encourage that heat to vaporize with the heat of the iron. You don't need to move it around either. In some ways, I think it's a bad idea because you might squish petals and move them around. You just want to apply direct pressure and heat in order to make that work. I actually did that with some of the flowers in this book, so we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to show you how that's done. And then I read about another technique. Not going to demonstrate that one today, but it will be shared with more instructions in the link. Evidently, you can dry some flowers in the microwave. I would guess that you could also do it in a food dehydrator if you had one. So I'm sure you can find out more information about those online. So let's get to prepping these flowers that I brought in today from outside. It is suggested that you put your flowers between two absorbent materials, flat pieces of material. So it can be tissue paper, it can be, oh geez, I'm using paper towels from the senior center here, but they don't have any pattern. If you've got paper towels at home and they've got a texture to them, you might not want to use them because that texture may transfer to your flowers and kind of ruin the look of them. But pretty much newspaper print, you have to be careful with the newspaper print because if it's printed on, because those inks can, bleed off into the flowers. Remember, if it's letting moisture out, it might be problematic. I also like to use regular parchment paper. So again, Kleenex, tissues, all kinds of different things you could use. I mean, just plain cotton that you're not using would work as well. So we are going to take a sheet of this handy dandy paper towel from the paper dispensers here at the Senior Center. And then when we're looking at our flowers, when you're picking flowers that you want to press, the more delicate and the less hard-bodied they are, the better. When I say hard-bodied, I want you to think of like a rose. So roses have that hard head on them that the blooms come from, and it's just really usually substantial on a rose. That can be really hard to press because that's a big object and it's really firm, so it's not going to press as well. You can evidently try to cut those in half and then try to press it, or I actually did try to press a rose. Let's see if I can find it here. I think it's on the very bottom, and it's a little fun. I put it in the book, and I really just pretty much squashed the crud out of the book. I think of hammering it down a little bit gently. I mean, you don't want to obliterate it, but just tapped it down gently to help break up the fibrous texture of that bulb. And there it is. So this is what my rose looks like right now. It's still got quite a bit of moisture in it. I did run the iron over it as well, but it's got a bit more time. It's going to need to dry out to finish letting all of the moisture again, because it had that big bulb on there, the big rose hip on there that needs to finish drying out after I broke it into pieces. So you can do a rose, but obviously it's not going to look a whole lot like the classic rose shape you might be thinking of if you try to do one. So you do want to try to use plants that are a little bit more delicate. So I did pick some of these. So when I say delicate, you know, it doesn't have this big bulb on it. Pretty easy just to lay on its side and squish. So I folded this paper towel in half, and I'm going to start laying out my flowers here. I'm going to kind of lay this one away. I like to face them toward the way the paper towel is going to fold back over it. So when I lay it over, I can kind of make sure all the petals are being flattened down, because it lets me make sure I'm in control of how those petals are going to be squished. Because once they're being squished, it's really hard to readjust them. You can, using tweezers or just being very delicate, try to remanipulate and remove and change the shape of the flower, but it's really difficult. So if you can control it from the get-go, you might be better off. We'll put this other little flower bud right there. I'm just working my way around. If it has what feels like a really stiff stem, sometimes you can either break them off completely, or sometimes I just bend them a little bit. Again, just to help it lay the direction I want it to lay down when it gets pressed. And I am distancing, so I'm going to do this that way. I am distancing the flowers apart a little bit. Again, when they go to get pressed, they can spread out a little bit, and we don't want them to overlap. Got these little diathesis right here. Laying some of them out. Hoping they crush pretty well. They do have kind of these thick bodies, but we'll give it a go. And I've got this thing, really tiny, tiny little flower buds on this particular piece. Still going to give it a go. I think I'm going to break off a little bit of the stem. When I go to flatten it, I'm going to make sure I kind of try to offset some of those just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to take this other half of the paper towel and I'm going to slowly start laying it down, trying to make sure I capture the petals how I want to capture them. I am holding my hand down on most of them here. Again, I just want to make sure that bushy one is not overlapping everybody. I get some distance between the flowers. There we go. And usually I just use my hand at first to give it a little squish. All right, and this is when you normally take and stick it in a book or put it under several heavy books. You can put some weights on top, some jars of fruit, and just let it press over time. Now, if you're in a rush and you don't want to wait for it, and I want to do this project now because Rebecca just showed it to me, let's introduce you to my new friend, the iron, which makes a pretty good, my old friend, the iron, it's a pretty good flower press. So I'm going to take just another paper towel just to protect my iron surface a little bit, because sometimes the color of the flowers do bleed through. I'm going to put on top of that my flowers, and then my iron set to, again, low, medium. I'm just going to put my iron on top of those flowers. Yes, you have caught me doing my ironing. Just ironing those flowers. And again, you don't want to use steam. Have your steam settings off. Don't have any water in there. I have an automatic off on my iron. So if you see me pick it up, it's just because I'm trying to make sure the heat stays on. And just pressing down quite a bit. I'm trying to let the weight of my hand do some of that squishing. And you might be able to see some of the flowers are starting to bleed through a little bit. So I am, just to protect my iron, going to put down another piece of paper towel. And I'm going to go right back to pressing with that heat. Kind of holding it in place. Maybe a little shimmy shake, lift up. Go right back down onto another group of flowers. And just work your way around. Trying to make sure I give a special attention to every single one of them. Feeling less resistance now as I move the iron. So I know they're getting flatter. All right, now put that aside for just a moment here so we can take a peek and see how we're doing. I'm peeling it back really carefully. All right, and this is why I usually like parchment paper because it doesn't keep things sticking as much. I don't know if you can see that little flower. There's a little flower in my hand. There's another one that we just peeled up. I'm going to put it against this white paper. It kind of makes a cute little flower. There we go. Zoom it in a little bit. And if you do find they stick, just be very careful when you go to lay them back down. Try to make sure that you, again, don't put them down in a way that's going to permanently damage. So you can see how they start to flatten and peel off and start to dry off. I'm going to go ahead and put these new ones off to the side and bring out some of the ones that I was working with previously here. And this is the difference. I like the parchment paper. They don't stick as much. So I had some herbs in my yard, and I don't remember if it's oregano. But I took some little tiny little leaf sprig is the word I'm going for, and pulled those off, as well as one of lavender. And again, I have some other just little, these are tiny tea roses. I have this really tiny tea rose bush in my backyard. So these little ones came from that. And what else do we got in here? Oh, These ones probably still have a little more dry time to do, but these are some more flowers that came out of my garden. A little bit of some tiger lilies, some clematis, and a petunia. This big purple one right here is a petunia that I laid down. Yeah, still has a little moisture. They're not completely stiff, but they're looking pretty good. And then we've got some others, so some things that are really easy to do. Ferns are super easy because they lay flat pretty well on their own. There's some more herbs. I thought this one was kind of fun because it's got variegated leaves. So they add some fun and whimsy. And now if you're wondering what the heck, Rebecca, are we supposed to do with all these flowers that we now picked up from around our yard? I think I'll go ahead and take this rose back out as well. There we go. Empty it out. Just going to give those a little extra dry time. So there's a couple of different projects that you can do with your dried flowers, and I've seen several. You can use them for decorative purposes. I have seen some people put them between two panes of glass and just have them out on display. You know, a little botanical art, which is beautiful. If you do it with two panes of glass, then you can see both sides. For things like ferns and such, that can be really interesting because then you can see little seed spores and stuff on the underside, or you can see the stem action that might be happening on the reverse side of a plant that you wouldn't necessarily see if you only could see the front side of it. So there we go. Added just a little bit more dry time. Sped it up just a little bit for those. Of course, now my paper's wanting to curl. And I'm going to attack these ones as well. I'm say attack sounds so violent. I am going to give these ones just a little shake here. Shake it up with a little bit of heat, make sure they're well and dry before we move on. Some other projects you could do. I've seen people melt a little bit of wax, and you can actually use that wax from a candle to add them to another candle, get like a larger candle, take off any plastic outer wrappings of it, and then we just got the wax. Go ahead and just you can just hold a lighter up to the candle over to the side to get the wax to soften a little bit, and then press dried flowers on the side. You can then use a paintbrush to just paint a coat of wax over the outside of it to seal in those flowers so they don't peel off right away. And you have a beautiful candle that's decorated with dried flowers. So that might be something very pretty to try. There we go. All right. So we got flowers, flowers, flowers all over the place right now. Or say flowers and leaves, because some of these really aren't flowers on their own. There's our rose. And here's our other little botanical bits and pieces. Now, as I was saying, there's a whole lot of different projects you can do. Now, probably one of the ones I've seen done the most, and it happens probably because something quick and easy to do, working with kids groups, which I used to do in the past, but it's to decorate bookmarks, which I thought we might do today. So I have a piece of cardstock here that we're going to decorate. I also have some specialty papers that are really delicate fiber papers that are decorative. You can also decorate cards and gift tags and just all kinds of things. I've seen online, one of the links you're going to see down below, someone took some of this very lovely paper. Actually, I think they made theirs from scratch. They made homemade paper. Also going to put a link in how to make homemade paper and embed botanical bits into it, which is really pretty. I'll show you some examples in just a second. and how you can make that, because it makes a great gift wrap paper, or you can turn it into a paper shape for a lamp or for a lantern. Just really, really some great ideas. Hopefully you are going to get some inspiration from. So for our bookmark and our cards here, I thought we'd try the cards first. So we have just some cardstock, super simple. I kind of like this one. It's really delicate. It's got the raw edge. I thought it might go well with just the idea of a flower. And then we've got just kind of a green backed little card here. You can certainly do a couple of different things with them. I think for this little white one, I think I am just going to almost like arrange a bouquet. To add, I guess I should talk about the adhesive. To glue it onto a card, you can almost use any kind of glue that you want to use. I'm going to work with a little bit of Mod Podge today. It's a glue and a sealant all in one, which since I want the flowers to be protected, will work out really well. So I am going to, because I don't want the card to accidentally glue together, so I'm going to unfold the card, and I am going to just real quick maybe make it a little arrangement of some flowers here, like I'm telling a story with them or something. Best part is it doesn't have to be true, because these flowers wouldn't actually be with this card. Because they don't belong to this. These are the roses wouldn't necessarily grow off of this particular plant. But hey, no one has to be wiser than you right now, right? When you're turning something organic into art, you get to be a little unruly about reality. Let's see here. I would like something a little bit bigger to go on here as well. Maybe one of these clematis. I think that'll be nice. So I'm going to carefully break the stem off of that clematis to add on. So now that I kind of laid out my card, I'm going to remove the botanical matter. And to protect the surface that I'm gluing on and to make sure I can get things back off, I'm going to just use a piece of wax paper, get the envelope out of the way, behind it. That way, and if it does get a little too much glue and the paper absorbs it, it's not going to glue to the table. So with my Mod Podge, you can use some diluted white Elmer's glue. I am going to spread just a little thin layer over the front of this card. Okay. Then I'm going to take my botanical. So I'm starting with the piece that would be in the back first. And I'm going to gently lay it down at the angle I want to be at. I'm just going to kind of touch the leaves down into that glue. There you go, ever so gently. And then I'm going to add in my flowers, kind of how I had them envisioned. Nope. I'm going to lay that one down backwards. All right, just carefully give them a squish squish when I get them where I want them. Ooh, might have that a little bit lower than I want. There we go. So I'm just gently tapping them down into place. Then I'm going to come back with my Mod Podge. Now, if you follow the rules really well, you want to give it a chance to set. I'm rushing it a little bit because, well, we're doing a craft demo. Let's get serious. Ha ha ha. So I am just coming back behind myself, and I'm tapping. First, I'm tapping down just to make sure I'm getting some Mod Podge off onto these things. Oops, just took the flower off. That's why I'm trying to do it carefully. Try to make sure things stay stuck to the paper and not to the brush, which is always a challenge. Alrighty, that side down. And I'm barely brushing across this flower. And I'm doing almost more of a careful sponging technique than I am brushing, because I know that if I pull at these flowers too much, they'll break the flower off, and we don't want to do that. We want to keep those flowers attached. There we go, one more flower, the pink one to do here. I have to come back and give a little TLC to one of these leaves. It's trying to stand up over the stem of this other flower a little bit. So I'm going to let it go just like that for right now. And then I will let the card sit and dry. I know, it looks a little tacky right now. You're like, it just looks kind of like a mess. Well, that glue's got to dry. When the glue dries, it'll be nice and clear and have a kind of a nice little shine to it, which is lovely. And you will have nice protected flowers on top of your little card. There we go. Now for our other card and for our bookmark, I said I was going to show you some really cool decorative papers. Hoping these show up on camera. I've had some of these for a really long time. I like to use them in different arts and crafts. But these are all really intricate fiber papers. And so there we go. This is a good example of one where they've made a homemade paper out of other recycled papers. And they wove in, I won't say wove in, they crushed in some grasses, some hay, and just made this beautiful organically patterned paper. You can have things that are more monochromatic. So this blue paper also has little bits reflected in it. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera, but it's got some other elements in there. And then this particular one I really love. So it's got these little rose colored, they're kind of purple petals, and really fine wispy organic matter that is strewn throughout it. Just beautiful and really gorgeous. I think it's an absolutely lovely, just delightful piece of paper. So these are things that if you're wanting to do some handmade paper, take inspiration from these. You can certainly use tissue paper, other recycled papers. It can't be glossy, can't have print on it, because otherwise you end up with gray mud color that's not delightful. But I will put the link for how to make paper. You have to have a blender that you don't want to use for food anymore. In the link down below, it can be fun to mix in some organic matter and make your own paper. Again, that can be a fun project if you're wanting to sculpt some paper to make a shade or a lantern or something as well to use. So today I'm going to use a little bit of this paper as a backer. I think I've already got some small pieces that I have used for other projects. So I'm going to use a piece of this purple here. Trying to guesstimate the size of our card over there. And when you say you're doing something organic, you can always be a little bit irregular, right? So I just cut off a piece, and I'm going to bring my card up here and measure it around a little bit more. I like kind of the raw, rough edge look that's happening. So I'm going to start the width of the paper, and I'm going to gently just start tearing. I'm holding one side and tearing the other, because I want all those little loose hairy fibers that are not showing up on camera, but you'll just have to take my word. There's some loose, hairy fibers. And so I like that kind of inconsistent looking edge, a little wispy. So pull off the one side, and now I'm going to come down the fourth side here. It's not perfect, and it doesn't have to be. You might be able to see it better when it's held up to the green. Kind of see that the edges are irregular and a little wispy. Kind of like that. I think that looks really pretty. Definitely organic if we're talking organic. So I am going to take some more of our Mod Podge, and I am adhering it. I am just wiping it really quickly across the back of this particular piece of paper. I don't want to get too close to the edge because I want those pieces to stay kind of free flowing. And I'm going to carefully flip it over and onto the face of our card. Push, push. I'm going to carefully tap, tap, push, push, tap, tap, push, push. Of course, as I did that, you know, if the glue came through the paper and onto my fingers, and that's okay. But it's certainly letting me know it's adhering really well. Since this card's bigger, this one might be the one to use the rose on, but I think that yellow and that green are too close to each other in color. I'm kind of eyeballing a fern. I'm just trying some of these out here to see what I like better. You know what? I think just the simple fern leaf is probably going to win the day. Oh, I think that one's too big. We're going with this little one right here. So to get this to adhere, because it's got some ridges on the back, I'm just going to carefully kind of come down the center of the fern, the back of the fern, and I'm going to kind of brush away, starting from the center of the fern, and try to make sure I get some Mod Podge onto each of the little leaves of this little tiny piece of sword fern that I've got here. Got some leaves that are trying to overlap a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to turn it right side up. Cool thing about the sword fern is because it's a little bit more flexible because it's got that really sturdy spine. You can sit here and get it to do kind of a fun bendy shape. All right. Now after I kind of have it in place, just try to tap it down. You have to be careful about how long you hold on to it because that glue is also on your fingers and it likes to hold on. And I'm just going to put a little more on the top. Again, just trying to encourage that leaf to stay where I put it and offer some protection over time. You know, when you make a gift by hand, you hope somebody holds on to it for a long time, right? There we go. Of course, I forgot to pop this one open, so I'm really hoping it didn't. Ooh, good. It didn't bleed through the back. So that's kind of what our fern looks like. Again, yes, I know it's kind of a muddled mess because it has yet to dry. So when it dries, you won't see the white, smudgy cloudiness that is the glue. You'll just see the beautiful fern laying across that bed of paper. And then, of course, I have a little bit of paper here as well. It's kind of a nice shiny piece of cardstock, which is nice and firm. And so with some of the rest of these, I am just going to slap on, since it's got a finish on it, I'm going to be a little bit more liberal, applying a lot more Mod Podge to this, what will become a bookmark. And if you have enough small flowers or the right kind of flowers, you can do fun things like turn them into a monogram. You can try to do the flowers like somebody's name. There's all kinds of fun things that you can do with the flowers that you pick and choose to apply. Of course, in Victorian times, flowers also had a message to them. So if you want to look up the meaning of flowers, you can also, share a special message with a loved one. Ooh. And give them something that maybe says more than just, here's a pretty gift that I made you. Check out what came from my yard or my garden, or I hijacked from the neighbors around the corner. Do ask permission before running off with someone's flowers. Highly encourage that. Let's see, I like this petunia a lot. Oh, I already set that one down. So I'm going to take the stem of this petunia off. This thing's super delicate looking, so I've got to make sure we've got all kinds of glue on this. There we go. Before I lay this petunia down, and again, you'd sit here and just carefully wipe back over the leaves and stem of the plants that you laid down onto your new work of art or the new gift that you created. Always try to remember to brush with the grain of the organic matter, if it's a petal or a leaf. That'll help keep it from tearing, which would be a nice thing to do. Otherwise, it kind of makes your project look not so great. A few more brush strokes from me here. And of course, I will probably finish this after our video here. Might drop on another flower or two, but it's looking pretty good. But you would just continue on and cover your bookmark. And again, you can use a piece of paper. You can certainly use some other options as well. I have seen people recycle dryer sheets, iron their dryer sheets flat back out because it has the gauzy look of some of this organic matter. And adhere some of the dried flowers to them as well. It can look really nice and really beautiful. You probably won't use the Mod Podge for that. You can seal it into either get some clear contact paper, or you can get some, or you can use a laminator if you have one to seal those in with the dryer sheets and keep it all kind of together. Works really well. Let's see, you can also do it without paper. If you have a really clean surface, make sure there's no dust flying around in there, and tie back your hair. You can just take a piece of contact paper, cut it to the size you want your bookmark to be, or maybe almost look like, some kind of clear background. Anyway, it's just really beautiful. So you lay the sheet out, or a strip of contact paper the size you want, bookmark, placemat, what have you. Lay out your flowers on it with that, sticky side up. Then you have to come back and ever so carefully lay another piece of clear contact paper, sticky side down. So you're pretty much making a sandwich, encasing those dried pressed flowers in between two layers of contact paper. It's a really beautiful look because then those dried flowers, you're just suspended there, and you can really just appreciate the nature and the beauty of them and you can see both sides, the intricate details that make a plant a plant. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the tips and ideas for how to work with dried flowers or pressed flowers here today. And again, if you want even more ideas with what you can do with pressed flowers, you can certainly check out the links below. Enjoy and have fun with those. And when you're gathering your flowers, definitely make sure to get permission if you're picking from somebody else's space. Really important, don't say, well, Rebecca said I could run around town stealing flowers. I did not. I said you had to ask first. All right, that is it from the Senior Center today. Let's see, I'll hold them up to see. They're starting to dry. There you go. There's the little gift card, first one we made, starting to dry up. And there's the one with the ferns. That glue is starting to dry up there, so you can just see the fern through it. But those are our projects for today. You guys have a great afternoon. Go get creative. I hope to see you soon. If you do work on a project, you know, you're always welcome to drop it in a comment below. Take a picture. Show me what you've been up to. I'd love to see it. I miss you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.